Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to introduce our next speaker to you, who in a slight change isn't, as you can probably tell, the lovely Deborah Arnett, but it is actually going to be Henry Vann, who is the head of External Affairs and has been running all of their media campaigns at the ISM for the past 5 years. A keen musician and singer, little interesting fact you might not know about him, this man has sung on stage at Glastonbury with the Rolling Stones and at the O2 in Hyde Park, because he is the voice of the backing choir for You Can't Always Get What You Want. So I don't think that's a very appropriate way to bring him on stage, seeing as how he is a replacement for Deborah, but let me a warm welcome, Henry Vann.
Can you all hear me? Yes, good, excellent. I thought I'd start with a little quiz because I'm feeling a bit jealous. Who was in the warm-up session just now? Right, so if you can all just do a beat for the whole of the speech, that would be really helpful because it made me feel a little bit more confident. What I just wanted to ask is, who in this room is a classroom teacher? Great. Who in this room is an instrumental teacher? I'm not suggesting they're different things necessarily, by the way. Who in this room is a music education groupie? Yeah. No, I can see a few of you, that's fine. So there's some easy questions. Who's heard of the Carter Review of Initial Teacher Training? Yeah. Who's heard of the Expert Subject Advisory Group? Okay. Who's heard of the Royal College of Teaching? Ooh, slightly more. They were the opening quiz questions. Well, those of you who are teachers will know a bit of audience participation always warms us up anyway. So, as Kieran said, I am not Deborah Arnett. Good, that may come as a shock. I'm Henry Vann, I'm Head of External Affairs at the Incorporated Society of Musicians. Deborah has unfortunately been called away to chair a collecting society board meeting this morning that she absolutely has to do. You may remember me from such campaigns as, it's what I've written next, but Protect Music Education, who's heard of that? Fantastic. Back for the Future, remember that one? Fantastic, excellent. Well, Protect Music Education gathered together, and still does, 135 plus organisations from across the music industry, including the Music Industry Association, PRS for Music, the Music Publishers Association, and from across the music education sector as well, the Music Education Council, Music Mark, the Musicians Union, and Music Teacher Magazine, and Rheingold as a whole, to help challenge the government when they want to withdraw funding from music education. It's targeted specifically towards funding. And I think you will remember there was a campaign focused quite recently on a proposal from the government to withdraw its recommendations to local authorities that they cut their funding for music services. I can see nodding, that's reassuring. And you may remember that campaign also focused on securing £70 million more for music services and music hubs going forward for 2015-16. So that was a fantastic victory, and it couldn't have been done without the people who know about the campaign, without the teachers, and without that backing of 5,000 individual supporters. So if you haven't signed up to that, can you guess where that sentence is going? protectmusiceducation.org. Please do sign up to that campaign, because it will become more important over the next 8 weeks and immediately following. I think there's an election. I haven't really noticed any media coverage about it yet. Have you? No, I'm a bit sick of it as well. Back for the Future managed to gather 46,000 individual supporters together with 130 creative industry organisations, and that actually managed to stop the EBAC from being compulsory in our schools, because that is where it was going. And I think that is fantastic, although the EBAC still hangs around like an uninvited ghost. So just a little bit about the ISM, if that's all right. We're the professional body for musicians and Subject Association for Music, and we represent approximately 7,000 musicians who work as everything from... Actually, here's a quiz question. Who in the room would call themselves a performer? Composer? Improviser? Educator? I mean, it is Music Education Expo, so I'd expect more for that one. But the fact is, people are everything. And we were founded in 1882, and our responsibility is to promote the art of music and maintain the honour and interest, it's a very 1882 phrase that, maintain the honour and interests of the music profession. And that is what we do. And I would just like to thank Rheingold as well, firstly for this opportunity to make this speech at the beginning of the conference, but also for the support they've given to our lobbying and our advocacy work on behalf of the music education sector. You can find out more about the ISM at stand E1 downstairs. So we're in this unique position within the sector that we have professional performers, professional composers, professional educators, all within our membership. And we have this insight into the industry and the education sector that enables us to campaign in the way that we do to protect music. And this speech is about shaping our future. We could ask lots of questions about what that means. But I think first we need to remember where we are now. I did not pay for that to happen, but that is perfect. A round of applause for the piano, sorry. Seriously, that wasn't planned. Well, I wish it was. So, we have a national plan for music education. Who's heard of the National Plan for Music Education? Far more of you. That's excellent. That came, just to recap, that came from the Henley Review of Music Education. That's 2011. The National Plan was published in November 2011. Ofsted published their triennial review of music education, Music in Schools, Wider, Still and Wider, on the 1st of March 2012. Music education hubs formally kicked off from about April 2012. Ofsted then published a report, a slightly controversial report, on what hubs must do in November 2013. And new funding was announced for music hubs for 2015-16 on the 22nd of July 2014. Who's read all of those reports? Excellent, fantastic. So we are almost unique as a subject, genuinely, in having a national plan for music education and having this ring-fence pot of money there to support, to augment and support the music education that goes on in our schools already. So that's one way we got here. The second thing I wanted to talk about, who knows that we're going to have new GCSEs, AS and A levels by September 2016? Good. This audience participation is getting easier. You're just putting your hands up. This is fantastic. There have been so many consultations over the last few years on what these new GCSEs should look like, could look like, by Ofqual, by the awarding organisations, by the Department for Education, and we as a sector have shaped what has come out of that, albeit there are still things that we're not happy about. No, there's not another piano note, that's a shame. The good news, I think, is that we've succeeded in possibly one of the less educationally significant changes, but actually quite an important change, is we've actually succeeded in getting them, you know that age rate at the time limit range they had, 1700 to 1900, a Western classical period, there was going to have to be a subject of study from that, delightfully they gave us an extra 60 years after our campaign, so they've given us 1650 to 1910. I have to thank Chris Collins from the University of Bangor here for pointing out to me when I said, why do they hate Stravinsky? That means the Firebird is in, but Petrushka's out. So I think it's important to bear in mind that things have changed, though. We are now allowed to study a broader range of music within that GCSE in all those areas of study. The musical use of technology has been integrated within that GCSE, AS and A-level sort of subject content, if you like. The references to minimum lengths for performing and composing, they're still there, and we've got to hope that they leave. Because can you imagine if you have a minimum time limit on a composition, everybody's going to be, well, the use of the repeat mark will increase substantially in GCSE composition, and students playing the minute waltz very, very slowly will probably perform better than those playing it at its possibly intended speed. But Ofqual and the government still ignore our musical advice, and they still insist that musical process, you know, that thing that we all get involved with, that's too hard to assess. We can't do that. Now, I know there are higher education people in the room who know that that's not true. And also, the amount that's going to be examined in a sit-down exam is going to be 40% compulsory, and that is an increase for at least two of the awarding boards. For art and design, it's 100% non-examined. For us, it's only 60%. Who here thinks that's fair? Cool. I thought I'd do an audience participation one where no one put their hand up. So what I just wanted to say very quickly about that introduction to Western classical music and about what that means, and a little tangent here. We have the fantastic BBC 10 Pieces project. Who's heard of that? as you'd expect. I think that's an absolutely fantastic project with some really brilliant resources and an awful lot of work around each one of those pieces. It is good news, and it is exciting that the music education sector are also going to be working with Classic FM as well to curate and give access to for all teachers to 100 starting points for classical music, for those who might not be quite as aware of what opportunities there are out there. So it's a slightly broader range of things for them to have a look at. So that's 100 starting points for classical music, just to help with a bit of breadth. So that's sort of covering off GCSE, if you like, and the hatred of Stravinsky and early Plainsong. The third thing I wanted to talk about how we got to where we are now, there's a new national curriculum. Who knows there's a new national curriculum? That's slightly less than new that GCSE is being reformed. That's mildly worrying. The new curriculum isn't going to hamper the excellent teachers. That's most of you in the room, I'm sure. And it's good that we've managed to avoid being micromanaged in the way that history has. You know, history, they're having to teach it in the order that it happened, because that's how our brains work, apparently. I'm not so sure about that. But at the same time, the curriculum is so slim, it gives us little scope for challenging bad practice. And it's a point Deborah, who is obviously sadly not here today, made in response to the final national curriculum when it was published. It's Lawrence Stenhouse. Who's heard of him? I can spot the HE sector in the room by who put their hand up to that. In 1975, he came up with possibly the best soundbite on teacher development ever. There can be no real curriculum development without teacher development. And I think that's something which is absolutely true. So going back, we've had our National Plan for Music Education, we've had numerous Ofsted reports, we've had our Henley reviews, we've had our GCSE, AS and A-level reform, and we've had our new national curriculum. It reminds me rather of a speech the then Shadow Culture Minister, Ed Vaizey, gave on the 27th of January 2010, when he said, "There is a blizzard of initiatives in the cultural education sector." And he pledged to tackle that blizzard of initiatives. I can't help but feel that we're still in a bit of a blizzard and we haven't quite found our way out yet. So where next? Can you remind me, who's heard of the Carter Review of Initial Teacher Training? You should all put your hands up now or you're not listening, because I mentioned it earlier. So let's try that again. Who's heard of the Carter Review of Initial Teacher Training? Hey, excellent. I think the elephant in the room are the people who aren't in this room. They are the teachers who can't get out of school to come here today. They're the teachers who do a bit of music education, but it's not their primary focus. They don't know to come to something like this to experience the whole range of sessions that there are on here, all of these learning opportunities, all of these things that are here to study, to learn, to engage with. They are the people who need our help most of all. And I just wanted to play a little game of spot the difference. The Carter Review of Initial Teacher Training is wonderful in that it recognizes that in subjects like modern foreign languages, music, and computer science, trainees are more likely to lack subject knowledge, experience, and confidence. Who agrees with that? Great. So he recommended that the DFE should make funded in-service subject knowledge enhancement courses available for primary teachers to assess as professional development, particularly in subjects such as modern languages, music, computing, as well as maths and science. The government response. For the financial year 2014-15, this is what you're spotting the difference for. This took the form of a grant-funded test and learn project for a small group of teaching school alliances to develop and deliver a range of post-initial teacher training provision in shortage subjects, particularly maths, physics, chemistry, modern languages, computing, and primary maths. Did you spot the difference? Music disappeared in the government response. They sort of just glided over it a little bit and pretended that it wasn't there. But we know from that Carter Review and from the Henley Review, which emphasised that much primary school classroom teaching of music is provided by non-specialist teachers, and the amount of time dedicated to music in most initial teacher education courses is inadequate to create a workforce that is confident in its own ability to teach in the classroom. And the Ofsted Review that I referred to earlier, not enough school leaders and managers were holding external partners to account or robustly challenging the quality of classroom curriculum music provision in their own schools. There was a limited take-up and impact of continuing professional development in both primary and secondary schools. The professional isolation of music teachers was again apparent, as it was in the last Ofsted Music Survey. So the elephant in the room is teacher development, and there can be no curriculum development without teacher development. So I think that perhaps is one of the things we need to be focusing on as we think about shaping our future and how we can all engage in actually helping those teachers who aren't here today in accessing professional development. And many of the people in this room will be those providing that professional development as well. I'm now going to go on to a little bit that I'm slightly better at, I think. And that's the campaigning and advocacy. And this is going to be really boring, because a message doesn't get through until it's really, 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 really boring. I almost said that for 27 times, because the one thing Deborah always tells us at the ISM and tells everybody is that you have to say something 27 times before it sticks. I don't know whether those of you who are teachers would agree with that or not, but you're all excellent teachers. You only need to say things once and it instantly sticks. But it's the boring bit of campaigning that we always need to keep saying, the economic value of the music industry. What percentage of new jobs, well, what percentage of jobs in the UK, shout out some answers, what percentage of jobs in the UK come from the creative industries? 26 billion, yep, 5%. 5% of jobs, 1 in 20 jobs in the UK. It creates 76.9 billion per year to the UK economy, and it grew by 9.9% in 2013, accounting for 1.7 million jobs. That's 5.6% of all UK jobs. So anybody who tells you, and I still get this, it was mentioned earlier that I sing in a choir. I had a girl studying GCSE music who sings in that choir, and she came up to me after choir one day and said, my science teacher told me to study a real subject and said that I shouldn't do music at university because there aren't any jobs in it. I sent her the government creative industries estimate and said, show these to your teacher and hold firm and say that you want to study music. But isn't it sad that that still happens in schools? And that happens all over the place. And I'm sure, who's heard a teacher say that or knows of a... You see, that's more shocking. That was as many hands up as almost anything else I've said today. And isn't that shocking? Keep saying it about the educational value of music education as well. Keep saying how important it is. Who has read The Importance of Music and its review and its recap by Professor Sue Hallam from the Institute of Education? Okay. Who's given a copy of the executive summary to their head teacher? More hands. Do it. It's really worth it. We need to keep saying these things, as boring as they are to us now, and as irrelevant as it may seem to say, oh, music education has a good impact on X, Y, Z. It's actually how you persuade people who are not on our side yet to come onto our side. So the other thing I wanted to say before I go into possible questions you might like to ask this afternoon is that the public do believe in us. Who watched Don't Stop the Music? Who thought it was an excellent programme? Who thought it wasn't? Who thought it was all right? Okay. Don't Stop the Music, whatever we think of that programme, generated 70,000 signatures on a public petition calling for the support of music education. Parliamentarians invited James Rhodes in to speak to them about music education. He's doing that next week. The ISM has been fortunate enough to be offered the assets of that campaign, the campaigning assets, that is the 70,000 signatures, that is the copyright, the celebrity contacts, and so on. And we will be taking that on to use to campaign responsibly for the future of music education with our music industry and music education partners. There will be more on that in the future. But those 70,000 signatures doesn't come easily, unless you're Jeremy Clarkson. But we'd better not go there. 70,000 signatures in support of music education matters. And why does it matter? Because politicians care about polls. They've started saying our polls back to us now. The ISM paid for a poll back in 2010, I believe, that found that 85% of the public, no, it wouldn't have been 2010, 2012, 85% of the public backed the forward to the National Plan for Music Education that states that music education must not become the preserve of those children whose families can afford to pay for music tuition. Isn't that a brilliant sentence? And it's got the public support. So with that in mind, I'm just going to do a quick sidetrack very quickly. Bromley Youth Music Trust. Well done. Well done. Does anyone know what happened there? There was a risk of immediate, full 100% cuts from April, as I understand it. By campaigning, by getting parents on board, by getting alumni on board, by getting children playing the Lion King outside the council chamber whilst the meeting's happening. Really. They actually managed to turn that round and secure 50% of their funding going forward and a better funding structure that will enable them to survive into the future. So actually, can we, as there's somebody from Bromley Youth Music Trust here, can we just say... That is about shaping our future. And I know this. I wasn't going to mention this today, but in my spare time, I'm a councillor and a cabinet member for education for a local authority. I know that if I had children playing the Lion King outside a council meeting, I would cave in. They need to see the impact that it has on children's lives. So, this is my final section of my speech. I'm signposting it very well, aren't I? How many weeks till the general election? 8. It's exactly 8 weeks until polling day. It is a Thursday. It is Thursday, the 7th of May. I'm actually standing for election, so that's why that's blazing in my mind. So in 8 weeks' time, there is a general election. Not many other sectors and not many other sector conferences can say that they've got the minister and the shadow minister coming to them, to their conference, to answer questions that they want to ask about music education. Well, or whatever that issue is that that sector's interested in. So first you're going to have Nick Gibb, the current schools minister, who will give you his take on music education and answer lots of questions. Second, you'll also have Kevin Brennan, the Labour shadow minister. The only thing I want to say, he's one of the few MPs with a PGCE. So it's worth quizzing him. And what I wanted to do was suggest some possible questions you might like to ask them. Is that all right? I thought I'd start with the easy ones. Are they going to keep funding the National Plan for Music Education? And by how much? That follow-up's quite important. Are they going to put 75 million a year in? Are they going to return to the original 82.5 million a year into music hubs? So somebody asked that. Progression. Are they going to keep funding the music and dance scheme? Is higher education in music going to carry on being funded? Are conservatoires going to carry on being funded? Who's going to ask that question? Somebody. Come on, we need to ask these questions. Ofsted. Who wants to ask a question about Ofsted? Yep, good. Initial teacher education. Should the primary teacher training module that was developed for music to help non-specialist primary teachers understand how to deliver music education be rolled out across the country and funded? Who wants to ask a question about that? Yep, there you go. School accountability. Can we just get rid of the EBAC once and for all and just have music? Right, somebody said hear for that. You have to ask that question. And I also thought it'd be helpful for some questions, I'm going to finish in a minute, to ask some questions about what we know about education policy already. 500 new free schools. Do we want to direct that funding elsewhere? And I'm going to skip through. A new concert hall. 70 million to 400 million in cost. Do we think that money would be better spent on something else? Or do we want a national music centre? Or do we think it should be built somewhere else? There's an awful lot of money there. Do we want to carry on with the GCSE reform? Have we had enough change? Do we want to just have no educational change at the national level for the next 5 years? I've got some nods to that. These are all questions you absolutely have to ask them because we really want to know what their answers are going to be. So we are, as I say, finishing in a unique opportunity to quiz our ministers and to quiz our shadow ministers. Thank you very much. I hope that was helpful and interesting. Piano aside, and thank you. Cheers. There we go.